might be slightly more applicable to the others who are about a specific book, but in general, where do the ideas come from? What's the inspiration behind your books?
They're always curiosity. Like, it's something that I thought, I want to know about this, because I don't have any expertise in anything really, other than drawing. That's all I can do. And I just think, well, what does this animal do? It's usually animals. I'm very interested in animals in the natural world. I suddenly someone asks me a question, one of my kids asks me a question, I think, oh, I really want to know the answer to that. And then I end up going down this kind of rabbit hole, and books usually at the end of it. So, curiosity.
Wonderful, excellent. And what is the kind of main thing you want young people to take away when they read your books?
Inspiration. So, also kind of developing their curiosity. So the whole point, especially with my animal books, is about trying to give them enough information to make them inspired by the things. They can go out and find more, they can get involved with things, just sort of fuel that kind of inspiration in whatever it is I'm trying to illustrate.
I'm sure you do that. Yeah.
I hope. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah.
And then my final question is, why is it important to you that young people have access to such high quality information books in an age where everything's digital, you can Google anything anytime? Why is it important to you that they have those information books available to them?
There's something different about a book. There's something personal, there's something private, there's something sort of, I don't know, they're more special, do you know what I mean? Like, there's something about books that themselves, they're kind of inherently this art object, especially when they're created beautifully, and it's something that you can kind of go back and reread, and it's less disposable. The internet is disposable, especially in modern day with Twitter and Instagram. It's like a few sentences and then you're done. Whereas with a book, you can spend time developing something. It's like with a TV series, you get to know the characters in it, you get to understand more about the things involved. And then in terms of the equality thing, why should anyone have something if someone else should? Everyone should have access to this stuff. It can provide opportunities to people. It can, try and balance out the scales a little bit as much as possible. And I think it's a fundamental thing that everyone should have access to. So.
Well, I'm sure no one would disagree.
Yeah, well, some people do, but, including in the government sometimes. But I think it's a really important thing. So,
So congratulations.
Thank you.
I just have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Just the first one is, where is the inspiration from to create your books? What are the stories behind them?
So for me, as a kid, I was always asking questions. It was like I had a million questions about everything, and I really, really loved the people and the books around me that would help me answer all the things I wanted to know about the world. And kids have the average child asks 300 questions in a day. So I just wanted, when I grew up, now that I'm kind of supposedly grown up, I wanted to be able to answer some of those questions, and I wanted to be able to help kids to make sense of the stuff they see around them in the world. And with Meet the Microbes, these past few years have been really scary times for everybody, and kids just don't know what to make of it, and they've kids who are 5, 6, 7 have spent half of their lives living in a world where we've got COVID, we've got pandemic, and they think that viruses and that bugs are things to be scared of. So I think it's really, really important, and that's part of the inspiration of why this particular topic for this particular book is to help kids to understand that bacteria, viruses, fungus, mould are actually really, really useful. Mm-hmm. Vast majority of them are good for us, they're helpful, they're useful, they're doing things to help us and protect us in the world and helping to make the future a better place. So I really wanted to help kids to firstly to understand what's going on in their bodies and on their hands and when they get sick, but then also to get rid of a lot of that fear.
I'm sure it does. And you probably feel you've touched on this a bit, but what would you like children to sort of have the main takeaway from your story?
So the main takeaway would be that bacteria, viruses, fungi, microorganisms are really useful, helpful and exciting little creatures, that they actually do lots of things to look after our bodies, to protect the planet, to help the soil, and even in the future could be doing stuff to help us solve the biggest problems in the world. So not to be scared of microbes, but to see them as fascinating tiny little creatures that have this whole world of their own that young people can discover.
And then just my last question is, how important is it to you that young people have access to such high quality information books in an age where everything's digital and you can Google anything? How important is it to you?
I think in an age where everything can be accessed, so much can be accessed online, I think it's really important that young people have physical books that they can put in their hands and they can turn the pages and they can like touch them and they can look at the beautiful illustrations and take them to bed with them and put them under their pillow, and in order to be able to help them understand the world. So I think it's wonderful that books, you know, are still going strong. It's a challenging time, but libraries are going strong. The School Library Association is brilliant bringing these books into schools, and it's really important that young people have something physical that they can use to learn about the world.
Lovely, great. Well, thank you very much, and congratulations again on the
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, lovely. Well, congratulations again on your win.
Thank you.
My first question really is just, where did you get the inspiration behind your story?
Well, I didn't write this, so I guess I got the inspiration from the writing. And Emily, she sort of communicated how microbes work in a way that made it really sort of fun to illustrate. So, and I was given a lot of creative freedom with sort of being able to give the microbes faces and make them characters, because I think you're dealing with something scientific that's so small and minuscule, it's really hard to show that to kids of a really young age. So I think you've got to give it a bit of character, a bit of fun, and a bit of artistic license.
Wonderful. And then sort of from your illustration, particularly in this book, what is the main thing you'd like young people to take away from reading the book?
Well, I think because we brought this book, we made this book during COVID, and the main idea was to get kids kind of understanding what microbes and viruses were, but not in a sort of frightening way. I mean, there was so much going on at that time that was difficult for children and something quite hard for kids to really understand. So I think we were trying to make it, make that information fun and accessible, and not too frightening.
Well, I'm sure you succeeded with the faces.
Yeah, exactly. We tried to make them like, fun little characters. Yeah.
That'd be great. And then my last question really is just, why is it important to you that young people have access to high quality information books in this age when everything's digital and just Google everything?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's so essential because, of course, you can Google everything and you can find all that information online, but you don't have that creative input. So when you get someone like Emily, who's a scientist, to actually talk about microbes, write a book about it, and then to have that, the privilege to illustrate it, you're bringing together two, creative minds, and you're not going to find that online. And that kind of printed resource, I think, is just really valuable for children. You don't learn in the same way as you would if you absorb information through a screen. I think books just have an incredible value and a much more sort of lasting impact than anything you can find on the internet.
Okay, great.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Please. Your illustrations, I mean, they are very bright and they're great fun.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely love them. Was it fun to draw them?
It was incredibly fun, yeah. And actually what's really great is often I get subject matter like, that's quite specific, let's say it's like dinosaurs or animals, or you have creative license with things like that, but you've got to be accurate. And with the microbes it's all quite sort of fun and loose. I mean, we've got to be scientifically correct, but at the same time, microbes are all different shapes and sizes, and we kind of, I got a lot of creative license with like colours and obviously adding faces, which they don't have, but to be able to make these little creatures, for me that was a massive privilege as an illustrator, to be able to just kind of go a bit wild and free with the colours and the faces and just make it fun.
And I wonder whether that would be your answer, because it looks as though you had fun.
Yes, well, that's good. I'm glad it's reflected
It
in
is definitely reflected in it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So congratulations again on your win.
Thank you very much. It's so exciting.
Where did so obviously you collaborated with Sean, but where did the inspiration come from for both this book, and also sort of where do you draw your inspiration from when you do your illustrations?
I would say, and I feel like I'm speaking on Sharna Jackson's behalf, that the inspiration very much comes from her. And she was working with Tenzin Hudson and wanted to make a book about contemporary Black artists. And again, she's an incredibly generous person and writer, and reached out to me because I am a curator and I work with artists. And I co-curated an exhibition at Tate Modern called Sullivanation, Art in the Age of Black Power, that kind of picked up quite a lot of momentum. And I think it was helpful to have, sometimes writing can be a lonely process. So to have a sounding board for who might make sense in a compendium, because you're presenting a selection, but it's a story, not the story. And so we were able to have a lot of, I think, productive conversations about who eventually were selected to be kind of profiled in these wonderful one-pagers that she wrote. And then, as I mentioned in the speech, my daughter, who I think is a big inspiration to me, was also not only, she's a very avid reader, but I think really didn't hold back with her opinions about what was working and what wasn't in the drafts. And so as a kind of test reader in the age group, I think hopefully it made the book better.
Sure it did. And what would you like the main thing to be that young people take away from the book when they read it?
Well, I'll have to quote another artist who's meant so much in my life, and that's a performance artist and conceptual artist named Lorraine O'Grady. And she says, we need mirrors to see ourselves. So for me, what I'd like people to take away from it is that you've got a compendium of artists who are doing wonderful things, each in their own completely and utterly original voices. But it may inspire future artists.
Sure it will.
Yeah.
And then just my final question is, so you're working with an information book. How important is it to you that young people have access to high quality information books in this age where it's digital and can Google anything?
I think it's crucial because there's something about that slowing down of time. I know during COVID we watched some really interesting science programs about the developing brain and how much more we retain without our phones than with them. They've done this experiment where, and the program's led by a teenager, which was really exciting, but they did this wonderful thing where, let's say we're in this room and we're asked to kind of remember certain facts about each of these posters. And then there was maybe our group who's doing it with our eyes and our minds and trying to remember things like, oh, there's a kind of, crab monster looking pistachio animal on that one, and a bunch of grapes on that one, and a winched up, a T-Rex. And then another group was able to go around the museum and take pictures. And then without the phone, they then had to do this little test to see what they retained. And the people who had their phones retained far less. So I think we always have this to hand, but I think there's something about sitting there and reading something about maybe just one work in particular, or seeing the picture of an artist and saying, oh wow, that person looks like me or looks like someone in my family, that creates an affinity that I think does make a difference for people.
Sure it does. Well, lovely. Well, congratulations again.
Thank you so much.
Questions?